Yo! Welcome back to one more meta. My name's Derek, and today we're getting into a deck tech that shouldn't be any surprise if you watched the top 10 list from last week, because there was a common theme that was going on with that list, and that was Goblins, and my absolute love for Goblins, and a lot of these new exciting Goblins. And one thing I talked about last week was how awesome that new modern combo Goblin deck, or it's not really a new deck, but kind of the revamped version with Snoop is. It looked so much fun, and while I'm not a modern player, I wanted to go ahead and do my best to bring that over to Commander. And there is no Commander better for doing so than Wort, Boggart, Auntie. Now we're going to get into Wort in a little bit and why I went with Wort over some other Goblins. But before we do, if you want any of these Goblins or any of these cards, most of which are going to be Goblins, head on over to TCG Player. Anything you get with that affiliate link down below will help support the channel. There's a lot of really fun cards on this list. Goblins are one of the stronger decks that you can build on a pretty decent budget too. So while this deck isn't a budget deck by any means, I'll throw some tips in throughout the video to help it get that way. Because yeah, Goblins should not be, no one should miss out on Goblins. And if you want any of that Gobbo fun, TCG Player is the best place to get it. Like I said, anything you get with the affiliate link below will help support the channel, help us get out more and better content. We really do appreciate the help. So getting into Wort, really when I was looking at the EDH Goblins and really trying to incorporate Snoop, really the three big choices for me were going to either be Krenko, Wort, or the Shattergang brothers. Now, Krenko, I've already done a deck tech for, and you miss some of the key pieces with Krenko if you're trying to go hard for that Snoop combo. So I wanted to try something different. And while the Shattergang brothers are great because it is Jund and it gets you access to Grumgully, which can be a really important part of a different combo in the deck, the Shattergang brothers didn't have the Goblin synergy I was looking for in it, so I just feel like Wort, Boggart, Auntie just filled the role perfectly. If you're not familiar with Wort, she is 2 red and black for a 3/3. It has Fear, which I don't really think matters too much, but the important part is on your upkeep, you get to return a Goblin from your graveyard to your hand, just Goblin recursion. And a lot of Goblins, if you've ever played them before, you're probably familiar with the fact that they either blow themselves up, blow other Goblins up, sacrifice other Goblins. Yeah, they're just constantly exploding, so in order to get to get constant value throughout the game, getting them back from your graveyard to your hand is amazing. It seems like it's decent on the card itself, but it's one of those things that's going to be way more powerful in effect because these Goblins have crazy powerful synergies, and just being able to keep getting them back and make it kind of just a hopeless quest of killing these Goblins can make for a very resilient deck. Really the biggest difference between this and Krenko is going to be Krenko is all out aggro, kind of with a combo backup plan where you're trying to aggro people out, make a bunch of Goblins, you got some backup combos in there. Wort's kind of going more for the long game, and you'll see it reflected in some of the card choices we make, where Wort wants more of value throughout the game and then some big wins. While I mentioned that we're playing those modern combos for the Goblins, we only run Singleton, and there's only so many tutors you can run, so we're not trying to tutor stuff up and win in 4 turns. This is more of a play Goblin synergies, and then late game try to pull off those combos. And Wort's perfect for that because of the recursion. And with the colors, you'll see kind of how we're going to do that and exactly what black is going to bring to the deck. All right, so jumping into the creatures, obviously lots and lots of Goblins. Before I get into too many specifics, I do want to go over the main combos that we're going to run. I don't really do a lot of combo decks, so I don't really focus on this too much. And I don't even want to save it for the game-winning step because there's some other big explosive ways to win. But basically, in certain games, if games stall out, if you really don't have much else going on, or if you're playing against a really strong deck, you may want to go for these combos. So first one is obviously going to be the Conspicuous Snoop Kiki Jiki combo that is so big in Modern right now. And basically how it works is you get the Conspicuous Snoop out. You can play either a Goblin Recruiter or a Boggart Harbinger, whichever one is basically, you draw first, singletons, whichever one you can get available first. Now, when you get the Recruiter or that out, you basically get to put your Kiki Jiki on top. With the Kiki Jiki on top, the Snoop gets the activated ability. You can just make as many Snoops as you want because Snoop is not legendary. So you can just make a Snoop, make a Snoop, make a Snoop, keep copying it over and over, make 100,000 Snoops if you want. And then with the last one, you go ahead and copy either the Harbinger or that Recruiter again. And then with that, you can put, probably the easiest thing to get is just a Sling Gang Lieutenant on top, which allows you to just go ahead, sack everything, drain everybody out, and win. It's a crazy, basically 2-card combo to win the game. And obviously in Modern with 4-ofs, it's much easier to pull off. In Commander, it's going to be pretty tough to pull off, even with just needing those 2 cards, because if anything ends up in the graveyard, there's ways it can become more difficult. But it is, for a deck like this, I love it as a late game win con. If you focus too hard on it, which you can, the deck might get a little bit too repetitive. Another cool combo you can pull off is something with a Metallic Mimic and also with Murderous Red Cap. Basically, with Metallic Mimic and the Red Cap, if you have a sack outlet, you can kind of get into other loops that basically just deals damage in a similar way to everything we're doing with the Snoop. And those are really the two main combos. There's others. I mean, we have Krenko in here. We have a Thornbite Staff with a sack outlet. We can have all the goblins we've ever wanted. So yes, there's tons of combo tactics type stuff, but we really don't need to focus on doing that every game, but it's nice to have it in there because again, this is a slower deck. So there are going to be games where that's our only way to win. Then outside of these main combos, tons of flexibility. Just pick your favorite goblins. Pick all your favorite goblins and throw them in here. One thing I will say is, for someone who's used to playing Krenko, the biggest difference is going to be in Krenko, which I think is just the most popular goblin deck, you focus so much on haste. Haste is the most important thing in a Krenko deck because you always want to get Krenko out and activated. With Wort, that's not the case. What we're most focused on is interaction with our creatures. So something like a Goblin Crater Maker didn't even make the cut in Krenko and is going to be hugely important in this deck. We want Goblin Trashmaster might be the most important goblin in here. We want stuff like Gem Palm Incinerator to be able to remove creatures. We're going so goblin heavy that it's going to take up so many slots. We need them to play other roles in the deck as well. Goblins don't do a tremendous job of drawing us cards, so we need that elsewhere. Obviously, we have Ramp in other places, whether it's a Skirk Prospector or a Dockside Extortionist. We really want to fill all those roles with our goblins, and so much in Wort. We want our goblins to be a toolbox as opposed to the spark that's going to light the explosion in Krenko. Much more toolboxy in this deck. In the enchantments, it's turning our goblins into damage. Stuff like Impact Tremors, Goblin Bombardment, or a Boggart Shenanigans. These are all hugely important because we have ways of just playing lots of goblins every turn, and stuff like this is able to turn it into damage. Again, I said we want to play a toolbox with our goblins. We also want to find ways to convert it into winning because if we just have a bunch of synergies but none of the real pieces, we don't want combo to be the only way. Flooding the board with goblins and cards like these can allow us to push damage around, especially in the case of Goblin Bombardment. It serves as removal, and again, I said removal and interaction is going to be much more important in this deck than in some other goblin decks. And then with the instance, the most important one is going to be Chaos Warp. Again, not a surprise in the world. Chaos Warp is any mono red deck you need it. Again, it's permanent removal. This deck is lighter on just any permanent removal than I like to go in a lot of decks just because we are so goblin heavy. So cards like this are extra important. In the artifacts, we're going to have tons of ramp. We just want all our mana rocks in here. It's going to be similar to a mono red goblin deck because black kind of ramps in a similar fashion. We're not in mono black, so we don't get a lot of the same devotion ramp that we would get in a mono black deck, so we are going to be heavily dependent on mana rocks, and we're going to stuff them all in here. I will say this card is a little bit expensive, but it is one of my favorite cards in a few decks now, and it's Memory Jar. This card, especially in a deck like this, is just super broken to me because typically the downside with wheel effects is, one, everybody gets a huge benefit, and two, if you have anything decent in your hand, you don't want to cast it. With Memory Jar, and I'm not breaking any news, this has been a very popular card for a long time, but what I love about it in a deck like this is because your deck's such a low CMC, even if you have cards in hand, you can play Memory Jar, put your hand to the side, get a bunch of cards, everything's such a low CMC that you can go ahead and just play out the new hand and then get the old hand back. And because you don't have to activate it the same turn, you can pay the 5 mana, leave it out, and then that next turn, activate it, get a handful of cards, cast a whole bunch of stuff, and then get another full hand. Memory Jar is one of my favorite wheel effects, especially because your opponents have to be able to use those new cards at instant speed. It's a super broken card, and again, not really surprising, but it's one of the few reserve list cards that stayed at a reasonable price, and yeah, I think more people should be running it just because I prefer this to even a card that's super broken like a Wheel of Fortune in so many decks because you get to choose when you get the benefit, and it's the closest thing to a one-sided Wheel of Fortune type effect that really you can get that type of benefit from. In the sorceries, outside of the creatures, the sorceries are by far the most important part of the deck. We're going to run a lot of looting and wheel type effects. Really pick and choose whatever you want here. The exact ones aren't super important. You don't need a Wheel of Fortune. You don't need any of the expensive ones, just any looting and wheelish type effects. These are hugely important because looting is great because we can just throw goblins into our graveyard, but there's some key non-goblin cards that we need in our hand, and our commander only recurs goblins, so we never mind throwing goblins into the graveyard. We have plenty of ways to get those back, but we need the other important cards in hand, and these are just great ways to pick and choose. It's literally like just having a massive hand of cards, which is awesome in Rakdos. Now I'm going to be saving a few of these for the game-winning step, and I'm sure you see which ones. But one of the best things about Black is we're going to have access to more board wipes, which is awesome. We're not just dependent on the Blasphemous Afterbust. We get quite a few more board wipes. And in the sorceries is where you can decide how tutor heavy you want to go. How hard you want to go for the combo is how many tutors you can put. If you don't want combo to be your primary win con, don't go tutor heavy. Run just more removal and more interaction. If you want fast combo, run every tutor you can get and go for those. Really is pick and choose, and you can find the happy medium for where you want the deck to be at speed-wise. Now with the lens, this is probably the biggest part of the deck that you can make budget and have basically no downside. The deck list that you're going to see below is basically like the idealized land base. You don't have to worry about that. If you're running basically all basics and an evolving wilds, you're probably good. It's a 2-color deck. You don't have to worry about going crazy with all the duels and all that type of stuff. Literally some guild gates and some life gain lands and mostly basics in a 2-color deck is going to do you just fine. Just fine. But there are some that are more on the budget end that are still really crucial that I think you should kind of force in. Witch's Cottage and Mortuary Mire are amazing because you can put a creature from the graveyard on top of your library. And in this deck, where all we want is Kiki Jiki on top and Snoop on the battlefield, this is better than it is in most decks. For most times, especially if you're in mono red and you're trying to go for that combo and all of a sudden, oh great, you know, Kiki's in the graveyard. That's basically it for the combo. You gotta find a different way to win. In this deck, that's not the case. Not only can you get it back with your commander, but these 2 lands let you put it straight to the top of the library. That's incredibly powerful. Because if you have the Snoop out and Kiki's in the graveyard, people basically think they're safe for now. And all of a sudden you drop that land, it goes on top, game over. These are so important and very budget. Obviously non-budget, Boggart Stronghold lets you do that repeatedly. Repeatedly, I can't speak. Repeatedly, that's the word I'm looking for. Repeatedly, which is, yeah, I got a little excited there. That's why I couldn't talk. You always have access to it, and in a deck like this, yeah, if you have that sitting around, I don't know, you'd have one sitting around, but if you do, this is the perfect deck for it because you just have this really redundant access to the combo if that's the case. But again, the budget options are going to work just fine. Also, I don't know how many times I gotta say it, Field of Ruin, all those type of cards, Tectonic Edge, put those in. We need land destruction. We don't have, you know, the Beast Withins and all that where we can remove permanents whenever we want. Like I said, Chaos Warp is really our only any permanent removal. Run land destruction in your land base, their budget, and we don't run really many colorless lands in the deck, so it's not gonna hurt us. You gotta put those in. All right, now obviously for the most important part and the most fun part of every deck set, it's the game-winning step. How are we about to win the game in this deck? And the first way is a card that used to be one of the big baddies of EDH, used to have this reputation. I just haven't seen it in so long. I miss it. And it is Insurrection. This is a card I actually put in my personal Krenko deck as well as a way to like pull games out of nowhere late game. And it's just such a fun way to just, especially you trying to get all your stuff going during the game, but stuff's not going your way. Board wipes over and over again. Your graveyard's exiled. Your commander's gone. This is the type of card you can just drop out of nowhere, take everyone's creatures and swing them all at them. Yeah, it's super fun. It's a great way to do it. Obviously, if you're running more sack outlets, you can be even meaner and just sack all their creatures after you swing at them. But a lot of times, there won't be an after because you swing at them with all their creatures. They're probably going to be dead. And then the next way to win the game is basically part 2, 3, and 4. It's a lot of different cards that all kind of try to do the same thing, and I think are going to be awesome in the deck. And it's using a card either like Living Death or Rise of the Dark Realms. We don't even care about other people's graveyards. We just want to get all our goblins back. Because, again, we're going to be sacking a lot of goblins. We're going to be playing a lot of goblins. We're going to be filling our graveyard up with these looting and wield effects. We're going to have plenty of goblins in the graveyard. And if we can just bring them all back with either Rise of the Dark Realms or Living Death, stuff will get crazy. But not just, okay, we're going to flood the board with goblins, which is great. You're going to have a commanding board state. But the specific ways we can win are what makes it so fun. Purphoros. Anybody. If we just drop Purphoros with everything, it's all entering at the same time, Purphoros is going to see it, and Purphoros is going to burn people to the ground. But let's say you're more in the mood for combat and you want to be swinging at people. Let's go ahead and drop that Ogre Battle Driver, bring everything back, and especially with Rise of the Dark Realms, getting other people's stuff, giving it all haste, pumping it all. What if we have a Krenko too? You know what? Then we get it at haste, we can tap it, make even more goblins go crazy. It's basically like living every goblin dream in one card. And this is what's most different from the Krenko deck, is the late game bombs you can drop in this deck. And I honestly think that once the game gets to a certain point, these are just going to be consistent game enders as long as you can make sure they end up in your hand and not the graveyard. And with these looting effects, I think we'll be able to do that pretty consistently. These cards are awesome in so many decks, but the instant just benefit you get more so than just having an overwhelming board. Sometimes people drop Rise of the Dark Realms and they just drop the whole board. You don't even know how they're going to win. It's more just annoying that they have so much of a board presence. It's just overwhelming. This leads to direct wins in this deck and actual ways to win the game and actual damage, not just making people want to scoop, which I love. A lot of win cons that are just, people just feel overwhelmed and want to scoop. I'm not a huge fan of those. I like direct ways to win, and this deck is filled with them. And then technically the third way is going to be all those combos I talked about earlier. Again, it's up to you. Depending on how your meta is, you can run the right number of tutors, the right number of combo pieces to try to get them consistently. I want those to be kind of the backup win con in the deck. I just love having them there, but it's up to you, and I love how flexible this deck is because you can really go creature based, you can go mass recursion based, or you can go combo based, and all three are going to work just fine. And in all honesty, I think a combo of the three is the most fun way to run it. And that is going to do it for this week's deck tech. I really hope y'all enjoyed it. Let me know what y'all think. Who is your favorite Goblin commander? Because I didn't even mention Muxus, and he is obviously going to be a very fun Goblin commander. You got Shattergain, you got Krenko, you got Wort. Technically, Rule Wort's a Goblin, not really a Goblin commander. Vow Smasher, so many Goblins that are just so much fun and so amazing. Who's y'all's favorite? Because there's really not a wrong choice there. And as always, a huge shout out to all the patrons. We love and appreciate y'all so, so much. As spoiler season finally comes to it seems like a little bit of a break. I'm really hoping there's a little bit of a downswing because there's lots and lots of deck techs that are just kind of personal decks, little brews that I've spiced up with some of the new cards, lots of stuff that we have to get to that we've been kind of putting on the back burner. So I'll be super excited to get all these out. Tons of stuff to come. But until then, I will see y'all next time.